Hey everyone, if you want to understand the future of American manufacturing, well, you really have to look right at the heart of it all, Michigan. In this explainer, we're going to explore the dramatic evolution of Michigan's automotive workforce. We'll trace the fascinating path from the massive blue-collar booms of the 20th century to the high-tech rebirths reshaping the industry today.
Okay, let's dive into this by contrasting two completely different eras. I want you to picture the classic 1950s shop rat, a proud blue-collar worker doing highly mechanical labor in a dense, urban-centered factory. Now fast forward to the projected 2030 battery systems engineer. This role is software-driven, it's decentralized, and it requires highly specialized technical skills. It's a massive, absolutely massive transition in what it means to be an auto worker. And understanding how we get from that historic blue-collar era to this high-tech future is exactly what we're unpacking today.
Section 1. The Rise of the Motor City.
So, to really understand where we're headed, we've got to look at where we started. Before the automobile, Detroit was just a moderately sized second-tier industrial city. But it was geographically blessed. It sat right in the center of America's industrial heartland, with the Great Lakes and rail lines giving it direct access to Pennsylvania coal, Midwest steel, and northern iron ore. It was like a perfect storm of geography and resources, completely transforming a compact city into the undisputed industrial colossus of the 20th century, the world capital of the automobile.
Watching this build over the years is just wild. In the 1910s, we see the rise of massive, self-contained plants like Dodge Main and Hamtramck. These places were literally cities within cities. Dodge Main eventually boasted an on-site foundry, a medical center, and by the 1940s, it employed a staggering 35,000 people. This sheer concentration of labor sparked the rise of the United Auto Workers Union, with pivotal moments like the 1937 strike at the GM Cadillac plant, where folks fought for better wages and safe conditions. And by the 1950s, the unprecedented wealth generated by these plants started fueling a massive suburban boom.
The historian Thomas J. Sugrue hit the nail on the head here when he said, over the course of the 20th century, the auto industry remade modern America and indeed the world. And honestly, it's so true. The auto industry didn't just build cars, it practically built the American middle class. It dictated our geography, our architecture with the invention of the residential garage, and the very concept of the daily commute.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the Great Decentralization.
But, that golden era of hyper-concentrated urban manufacturing, it just couldn't last forever. By the late 20th century, a perfect storm hit the Detroit auto industry. Automakers began introducing new automated technologies that required fewer workers. Production decentralized into sprawling suburban plants, creating this spatial mismatch where inner-city workers just couldn't physically reach the jobs anymore. Add in intense international competition, the oil shortages of the 1970s, and high labor costs, and the result was a devastating wave of plant closures that gutted urban neighborhoods.
We absolutely have to anchor these big macroeconomic shifts to the real human reality. The mighty Dodge Main plant, which, remember, once employed 35,000 people, closed its doors in 1980. The very next year, in a desperate bid to keep manufacturing inside the city limits, the local government used eminent domain to demolish the historic Potown neighborhood just to make way for a new, highly automated Cadillac plant. It was a deeply controversial and painful displacement for local residents, really highlighting the desperate measures taken to hold on to a shifting industry.
And inside the plants that survived, the demographic shift was pretty stark. In 1950, there were 26 white-collar workers for every 100 blue-collar workers. Fast forward to 1990, and that number jumped to 63 white-collar workers for every 100 on the floor. The workforce was becoming much more bureaucratic, and the physical assembly line labor was slowly but surely giving way to management, engineering, and automation.
Which brings us to Section 3, the electric investment surge. Now, drawing on the 2026 Auto Workforce Transition Report, despite all that gloomy deindustrialization we just talked about, Michigan's auto employment is poised to stay shockingly stable. Why? Because of one massive number, $14 billion. Between January 2022 and October 2025 alone, automakers announced roughly $14 billion in new investments in Michigan, with suppliers pouring in billions more on top of that. This just goes to show the staggering scale of the state's high-tech pivot toward electrification and advanced manufacturing.
What's truly fascinating here is the sheer speed of change on the factory floor.
Now, internal combustion engines aren't disappearing completely. They're still projected to make up half of the output. But get this, hybrids and battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, are projected to skyrocket from just 12% of production in 2024 to a full 50% of all Michigan vehicle output by 2030. That is a rapid jump.
And the really smart part, the state is actively diversifying its battery economy beyond just passenger cars. They're expanding into long-duration energy storage for power grids, marine, off-road, and industrial applications. This is absolutely crucial because it insulates the workforce from the unpredictable ups and downs of consumer EV demand, creating highly resilient, long-term jobs.
So, let's look at Section 4, the new auto worker.
Okay, so the crucial point is this. The narrative that auto jobs are just vanishing, it's completely false. They are just radically transforming. By 2030, Michigan is projected to lose about 15,000 jobs in the upstream supply chain. We're talking traditional metal forming, machining, and internal combustion engine parts. But look at the flip side. The state is projected to add over 13,000 jobs in core motor vehicle manufacturing. That means software developers, data scientists, and industrial engineers. It's a really delicate equilibrium. The overall job numbers stay roughly the same, but the people, the skills, and the communities affected are completely different.
The daily reality of this work is shifting fast. We're moving from metal forging and casting to advanced electrical testing, diagnostics, and EV motor components. And the 2026 report notes a massive skills gap right here. Employers are literally begging for folks with digital literacy, electrical skills, and interdisciplinary problem-solving abilities. The state has to retrain a massive chunk of its workforce to understand circuits and software rather than just wrenches and rivets. Finally, let's dive into Section 5, Pipeline and Geographic Challenges. Now, you might be wondering, does a transition this massive happen without friction? Of course not. First up is the geographic divide. The new high-tech jobs are concentrating in large assembly plants right in major hubs. But those 15,000 job losses we talked about, those are happening at small and medium-sized suppliers that make traditional gas engine parts, and they are scattered all across smaller communities. Just one supplier closing can totally destabilize an entire small town. So the risks are super concentrated geographically, far away from the booming assembly hubs. Then we have to ask a massive, urgent question. Will Michigan even have enough workers to fill these new jobs? The manufacturing workforce is aging, and it's aging fast. To put that into perspective, the data shows there will be over 140 job openings just for industrial machinery mechanics alone in the coming years, driven heavily by a whole generation of worker retirements. So Michigan set a 60 by 30 goal, aiming to get 60% of working-age adults a post-secondary degree or certificate by 2030. Right now, they're at 51.5%. That is progress? Sure, but it's still below the national average. If they want to keep that $14 billion of investment, Michigan literally has to aggressively retain its engineering and high-tech talent. Because right now, they're competing directly with Silicon Valley for the exact same software developers and battery specialists. So how exactly do they fix this? The 2026 report lays out three main solutions to bridge the gap. First, create a statewide, employer-led battery consortium to standardize training. Second, align K-12 education with industry needs and massively expand lifelong learning programs like Going Pro to upskill current workers. Third, use layoff aversion tools like the WorkShare program to proactively help vulnerable small-town suppliers transition their businesses, maybe into aerospace or medical devices, before they have to let their staff go. Ultimately, this whole shebang comes down to the next generation. We have got to shatter that old cultural perception that manufacturing is just dark, dirty, and physically demanding work. We need to expose younger students to the reality that modern auto careers are incredibly high-tech, clean, high-skill, and high-value. So if you take nothing else away, remember this. The vehicle is basically becoming a giant computer on wheels. Michigan possesses the institutional infrastructure, the industrial legacy, and the deep-rooted resilience to remain the undisputed auto capital of the world. But, and it's a big but, it can only hold that title if it acts with absolute urgency to master this massive skills transition. I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. We are living through a literal industrial revolution happening right in our own backyards. As the old shop rat officially makes way for the battery systems engineer, ask yourself, is your local community ready to trade its wrenches for code? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.